Hello and welcome to one more live stream and co-working session. For context, I run a community with over 1.2K people and professional Android developers. And every Monday we are making a post collecting topics that are going to be discussed in this co-working session. And if you want to be part of the or contribute to these topics, you're more than welcome to join us inside the community. And you can find link below the stream about how to like what's the link to the community and how to join us. In today's session, we're going to be talking about migrations, database migrations, and we're going to see how to do them and how to test them and why they are important, of course. So if we manage to be on time, we are going to also cover not only Room, but also SQLite, how we can do migrations there, because SQLite supports Kotlin multi-platform since a while now, and potentially you might be using it. So we are gonna see how we can do that in SQLite too. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I would appreciate if you can share your questions in the chat. I'm gonna be trying to take a look from time to time, and yeah, also you could. I would appreciate if you click like or subscribe. Then you're gonna get notifications on time when we're going live or when we're publishing new videos. Now, without much further ado, let's get started. So, as I said, today we're gonna be talking about database migrations. So let me actually show you first what I've got here, the little setup. This repository is going to be linked. It's a public repository we're using inside the community for training purposes, and it's also going to be linked below the stream so you can find it. And what I got here basically is just one screen, one button, and when I click this button, it's going to insert the record in a database. Now, the tip number one when you're working with databases is like you can use the app inspector to see here what is the database, how does it look like, what are the records, and so on and so forth. Currently, I just installed the application. There is nothing inside, no databases at all. If I click on this button, it's going to create the database and it's going to insert a record. And this is the actual database that we're talking about. It has only one table and it has 1, 2, 3 columns. And the idea behind this stream is that we are going to make a migration to alter this database. And we will see different aspects around it, how we can test it, how we can introduce different things, and how we can get confident into working with it as the time goes by. Now, let me show you what I've got as a setup. We'll start from the version catalog. Pretty straightforward. I have the room runtime, room compiler for the KPS. For the KSP. Then what I've got else? Room KTX, so that I can expose from room, like let's say suspending functions or flows. So this actually dependency allows me to do that. And then room testing, so I can write tests for my migrations as the time goes by. Cool. I made here a bundle for room where I have the room runtime and the room KTX. And as I mentioned before, this plugin has to be applied. It's coming from Google DevTool KSP, so that we can work with the database. Next, in my root build.gradle, I have added the plugin, and ultimately I have added the plugin here in my application build.gradle, the app module. And what else did I add here? Yeah, just the dependencies for room, the KSP, and also for testing, I have added that. So that's about it. And then as of the screen itself, let me show you also that just a little bit so that you get better idea. So nodes screen, I have just one composable screen that is a scaffold that has a top bar and it has one button literally inside. I'm also injecting a view model here, and when I click on the button, it calls on the view model insert node. Now ignore the setup here for the time being. What happens here is that we have just a view model that injects the DAO, and here it creates a node by using some random numbers, and it inserts it into the nodes DAO. And now that we have that, let's actually take a look at the database setup. So here you can find it. As I said, this repository is public. You can find it. There is a link below this stream, but also I'm gonna share later, make a post with it. And what we've got here basically is just these three files are important. We have a node that has 3 columns, as we saw in the app inspector as well. So those are the columns: node ID, title, and content. That's our entity. Next to that, we have our DAO, which exposes just a few functions. It's not that we are using them, we just use the insert for now. But that's how usual DAO looks like. And then we have the actual database. So what's important when it comes to the database is that this version number here. So as the time goes by, databases are changing. So we are adding columns, we are removing columns, we are migrating tables, creating new tables, and so on and so forth. Now, the exercise that we're gonna do here is we are just gonna add one column, but the idea behind is to find out how we can actually create that migration and how we can test that migration so that more complex migrations can be done on the same manner once you understand the basics. So I was always, and I'm always somebody who is first focusing on getting the basics, the ground, like get the foundation right, and then everything on top of that will come easy. Okay, now we have only one entity, as I said, the node, and the version is 1. That's it. And then we have here a coin module where we are instantiating the database. So we're using the database builder to put there the nodes database. We add some name there and we build it. And then we expose the nodes DAO by using that database. And that's how it works. As we saw, it works pretty okay. I've added a record and we saw that here in our database. So far, so good. Now, we want to add a migration. And the idea is to see how we can actually go around it. Now, the first thing when it comes to the migrations is that in the recent versions of Room, I mean, not recent, it's been a while, but back in the days when I started using Room, there was no schemas. And recently, they added schemas. And what happens is that basically we can apply a plugin for Room that will generate a schema automatically based on what we have as a setup here. And then it's going to be a schema of the current version of the database. When we make a migration, it's going to generate another schema, and then we can use these schemas to make validations on top of that. And as the time goes by. So these are very useful things. So the first thing that we would like to do is add that plugin and see how that's going to work. One moment. I'm having here a technical issue with the screen share. Anthony, could you confirm if the screen is working now? The screen share?
Yes.
Cool. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Nice. Now, let's see what we've got. So the first thing that, as I mentioned, would be inside our toml, we are going to add one more dependency here. And let's name this room. So it is a plugin that comes from Android X. I think, let me check to be sure. Android X.room, that's the ID. And then the version ref is going to be our room version. I'm gonna sync. So this is the step number 1. Why it is important is that because right now we don't have schemas for the database. So the application works, the database works, but we have no schemas just yet. So what's gonna happen is that we need to generate these schemas, or actually get this plugin generate that schema for us. Now in my root here, what I'm going to do is I'll add also the libs plugins room, apply false, sync, and I'm gonna take this and then go inside my application and add it here too, and then sync again. Okay, so here is the issue number one. So I've added the plugin and it says there is no schema location specified. So now that we have this plugin specified here, we can actually add here a block room. One second, because I don't have this on top of my mind. The block itself. Okay. Yeah. So here I would say schema directory. And then here I would say give me the project directory / schemas. And now I'm going to try again, and the sync should pass. And it does. Let me see if the schemas are generated. Okay, they are not. So I have to run the project, and that's a very important step, so that it's going to generate those schemas now. So I haven't done any migration. I haven't written anything, just added the plugin and added here a setup for my schemas where it is going to be. And as you can see now, it generated a schema file, which is like a JSON file. And if I open it, we can take a look what happens. So here we have create table if not exist, the table name, then the columns, and then it has what are the fields. Basically, I have 3 fields, and yeah. So this is the schema. So it is important in a setup like this to also commit this. So push this to your repository so that when somebody pulls this project, they're gonna have the schemas as well on their side. Okay, so that was the first step. The next step is to write actually to do this migration. So what we need to do is we will have to write this migration and do the changes also in our code. So here inside the database package, we're gonna do the changes. And yeah, hi Zainab, we just started, so no worries. So here, the first thing I'm gonna do is I am going to write new file. In this file, I'm gonna call migrations. So the name of the file doesn't really matter. It's just what I prefer to have. And then here we can have vals. In fact, if this was a module, like database module separated, I can make these internal vals so that they are not going to be visible outside of the module. But for now, I'm just going to keep them public. So here you put name of the migration. So it doesn't matter how you're going to name it, but it's important to have some sort of distinguishing between the migrations. So I'm gonna say migration 1 to 2. So version 1 to version 2 makes sense. And that's how I'm gonna know what's happening there. So here, this is gonna be an object that is going to extend from a migration. And then here, the migration says from which version to which version it is going to be happening. So this migration will run when the database migrates from version 1 to version 2. Clean enough. And then here I can actually run as many queries, SQL queries, as I want. Like here, I can override a function which is migrate, and it gives me like there are few, like I can directly talk to the connection, the SQLite connection, which is a little bit lower level of abstraction, or directly talk to the database. So I'm gonna override this one, and since it gives me the database, this is more or less like an interceptor. So it gives me access to the database, and what I can do is I can execute queries over the database to do the migration. Now here I can execute as many queries as I want. So imagine if this one was like some sort of bigger migration, I can literally do everything here. Like I can create tables, copy data from one to another table, like literally do anything that you can imagine. Like anything you can do with SQL, you can write here. So for now, to keep this thing simple, I'm gonna say execute SQL. So I'm gonna write a statement here. The statement is gonna be alter table. My table name is node, right? Yeah, this node. Where was it? Back to my migration. And then what I want to do is I want to add column that is going to be named favorite. So like we have nodes, and now I'm gonna add a column which is gonna be favorite, and it's gonna have a flag inside whether this is my favorite node or not, favorite node or not. But it is not like, because I want to keep the state like a boolean, there is no boolean concept in the databases. I have to use integer for this. And this is gonna be not null. And then I can also specify what's going to be the default value, like when a migration happens, the records that are already there, what version they're going to get. So default 0, I would say. That's my migration, basically, migration 1 to 2. So now that I have written the migration, what else do I need to do is I have to also change my node here to also add that column. So I'm gonna say column info. Name's gonna be favorite val int. Now make sure that this is the same as the one that you have. Let me actually close this and this and this that you're gonna have here, just to avoid some typos. So that's it. And additionally, in a database, I have to also change here the version. From version 1, I have to make it version 2 now, so that it knows what's happening. And then additionally, what we have to do when instantiating the database, that's the last step here, I have to add the migrations. So I have to say add migrations, and this is a var arc, so it can take list of migrations. Currently, I do have only one, and that's the one. That's pretty much it, basically. So that should do. And now that we have changed the node and I'm directly using this in my code, probably there will be a mistake in my view model. So let's actually go and change that before it crashes. So here is my view model. And here it takes one more argument, which I'm gonna say 0 by default. And that's it. Okay. Now, the thing is, I have version 1, I have some data, I'm gonna add version 2 now, or migrating to version 2. How am I going to test this? Now, the naive way of doing this, or like the manual way of doing this, is like install version 1, then install another version of the application, like generate another APK with version 2, install it, and see if that's gonna work. But that's pretty much painful process, and I would not suggest doing that. So instead, what we could do is we could write tests for this to verify the migration. Here I have in my source, and by the way, note that there is no 2.json still generated because we haven't run the application, nor the test, nor nothing. Now here I'm gonna add my regular Android test Java, and I'm gonna add the package nl java meet rm app. The thing is, these tests need instrumentation because they are running sort of over a live APK. Then it has to be, it needs an instrumentation to do like check the migrations. So it sort of generates in memory database or uses in memory database. So that's why it has to be an instrumentation. And now let's go ahead and write a test here. I'm going to name this, let's say, DB migration test. That's going to be a class. And I have to say here run with, what was it? Android JUnit 4. Make sure that you are using the correct import from Android text because the other one is deprecated. Now, is I have to say get rule, and I'm gonna create here a rule helper, which is gonna be migration test helper, and that one is just instance of a migration test helper. By the way, I don't have to specify the type really. And here I can say instrumentation registry, get instrumentation, and here I have to say nodes database class.java. So that's my database. And then what else? What else? Yeah, now I can actually write the test. And by the way, this is org JUnit test. And here, let's say fun migration 1 to 2. That's going to be my test. And here I would say, first I'm going to instantiate the database. So I'll say helper, create database. And then here I have to specify a name. Let's say test DB. And here will be version 1. And additionally, what I'm going to do is execute some SQL on it. So basically, I can insert some data to begin with. So like I can add one record on the version 1. And in this case, it's going to be insert into node. And then what are the columns? We have node ID, title, and content. Values is going to be 1. Then let's say title. And let's say content. Or maybe say title _1, content _1, something like that. So far, so good. And then I'm gonna close. Cool. Now, actually, let's make this variable so I can reassign values to it. I would say helper run migrations and validate. So this is a function that is available on the helper so that we can do validations on top. And then here I have to put the same name. So maybe let's extract this into like that, like name. Or maybe refactor this to DB name. And then I would say like here I have to specify to which version I want to migrate. I want to migrate to version 2. Then additionally, it says validate dropped tables true. So I don't have now drop tables or anything, but yeah, I can just keep that to true, doesn't matter. And then which migration do I want to run? So I can say migration 1 to 2. Now, when that runs, after actually that runs, what I can do is I can do some assertions here. So I can make sure that the column that I wanted was added after this migration. And to do so, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cursor by querying the database. So I can say query, and then here I can say select everything from node. And now this cursor actually gives me access to the column names. I can do assert. Was there something like array equals? Yeah. So here I can say assert that array of node ID, then title, then content, and finally favorite. So the old one was node ID, title, and content. That's the array. And now we are like, after running this migration, we need to have also favorite. And then here I can say the cursor dot column names. So that would be an assertion I can do. Another assertion I can do is I can actually check if the last column, if the value inside the favorite is, let's say, 0, for example. But to do so, I have to move the cursor to, let's say, a record. I can say move to first, which is like definitely an older record, so probably this one. So if I have here multiple records, like to the first is definitely one of the first ones before this migration happened. And then I can do assert equals, so this should be another import, assert equals let's say 0 get, and then here it gives me, like you see this API, it gives me get string, get int, get type. I need get int, and then it sort of provides me, like I can provide which column index I want to get integer from. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. I can say 3. Either 3, or additionally maybe I can do, let me just check, cursor column, get column index for column name. I can do that. So favorite, and I can do this like that. And here I can say column. One very, very important thing that I also have to do that I have forgotten, which is we have to add additional configuration in the build.gradle. So if I go to the build.gradle, here for the tests, I have to add here something that I also don't remember from the top of my head. How was it? So let me actually search for it and find it. Okay. So yeah, it has to do something with, I have to just specify for those tests, I have to also specify the schemas location. I just have to find in the documentation, where is it? And then we can call it a day. Okay. So let me check the documentation once again. Yeah. So here I can say in the Android, I have to say sources set. And then here I have to say get by name Android test, and then assets source directory. And then this is adding to the source directory again the project name, project directory slash schemas. So the same value that is here. Yeah. And that should be fine. So sync again. And now, as you can see, this is also like it changed because it's part of the, like considered in the tests. And now I'm gonna run this test. And let's see what happens. It's a little bit of patience. While we're waiting for the people that are maybe watching on YouTube, if you have any questions or any comments, please drop them on YouTube. So what does it say? It says while compiling insert into node values one. Okay, so there is a into the test there is a mistake. Yes, correct. So here I have forgotten to add this. Yeah, let's run again. A little typo. Running again. Again, mistake. Okay, expected 0, but was 3. Ah, okay. So the I got it. So this is another mistake that I made. So it says like assert that 0 is the column index. So instead of column index here, the column index is 3, but I have to get a value. So I have to say cursor get int from which column. The column is going to be this. So maybe it would be still worth it to get the column index of the favorite. Column index of favorites. Now this is cool that it failed, so that it shows us that actually this migration, this test is valid, it runs valid. So now, now if it passes, it tells us that actually the migration is running fine, and yeah, we can rely on this test basically. And that's it, it works. So cool. Now, as I said, this is very simple, very basic. We get through all the steps and actually step by step, seeing, okay, I have to select this other phone, seeing how to approach this whole thing. The most important things are the schemas, the plugin that we have applied for Room, so it can generate the schemas for us, and then adding those schemas in the build, in the sources set for the tests and for the plugin itself. And basically that's it. And then, as I said, this is very simple, very basic migration, but you can do much more complex migrations once you grasp this. I have to note that in the recent versions of Room, there are also these automatic updates or automated migrations. And I haven't looked into them. I don't know too much about them, but if I took if I understood well the documentation, they're quite limited. So like you can do auto migration. So basically when you create the database, so let me see, here is the database. Here what you can do is you can say auto migrations, and that's going to be also an array of migrations, and then you can say here auto migration 1 2. But this auto migration, like it is limited to certain things, or like you can also write um, an implementation of this migration yourself if you want, so that it's gonna have this is like from, this is to, and then you can do specs, and then this specs is gonna be an implementation of your own that you can write yourself, which is basically auto migration spec, and then inside you can override some functions to do um, like things related to the migration. However, if I understood well from the documentation, these things are limited to deleting table, renaming table, and deleting column and renaming column. I might be mistaken, but that's what I've got from the documentation. One pitfall maybe is that if you, for example, have a few migrations already and you haven't had these schemas, I'm not 100% sure that there will be any issues, but basically, even if that's the case, you can generate the schema for the current version, and then every follow-up migration is gonna be okay. It will generate the schemas. But I don't know if it can generate schemas for older versions or if you have to write them manually. Anyway, so I'm gonna commit this thingy. Let's actually run this application once again now. And while it is running, I am going to make a commit. And you can find this in a separate, let me do this, introduce or perform DB migration. And now I'm going to push this. So as I said, the project is going to be linked below in the video. And if you check out the project and go to the feed/db migrations branch, you can find all the changes and how this was done. And let's take a look here now in the database. So it says it is closed. I'm gonna add a node. And as you can see, the node that we have added before in the version 1 is still there. Well, this one was that. And it set the favorite 0, and then it added one more, also with favorite 0. And I can add some more, and if I refresh, they're gonna be all there. Cool. Alrighty. Now, because we have a little bit more time, what I'm gonna do also is, how about doing these migrations if you have SQLite database? Apparently, it turns out much smoother, much easier. So let's actually take a look into that too. So this is different project now. So let me check recent projects, this one. And I'm gonna close the other projects. Now, what's cool about this project is that this is also an open source project. This is also linked below in the video. And we have videos also on YouTube and inside the community about setting up SQLite. And this is a project that already has SQLite. So what I'm gonna do next is just do the migration here. And that should be pretty much straightforward thingy. Now, if we check here in the shared database, we already have, as I said, SQLite setup. And here we have SQLite stuff. Now, let me check. There is a comment here in the chat, or is it a question? Let me check. Zainab. The question is, what about previous data in cases like this, such as building a new flow based on this new favorites field? Let's say, what's going to happen to the old version users? So the old version users are not having the new version of the code. So basically, any code that you're gonna add after this migration is gonna be basically when they run the application, the first thing is gonna be this migration is gonna run, and then this new code will be executed. Meaning that code will rely on thing that is already there. So old users are not gonna get any issues. New users also won't get any issues. Make sense? So the users, if they decide to update the application, they're gonna have both the migration and but once they update the app, their past nodes are still gonna get the default value. Yes. So they'll get the default that you have set in the migration. And in the migration, you can say, okay, my default value shouldn't be false, should be true, let's say, for example. Did that answer the question? Okay. Meanwhile, if you want, Zainab, you can also unmute yourself and speak out the question. So let's take a look how we can do a migration in a SQLite setup. Now, the first thing that we have to do here is, again, having to do something with schemas. So we have users database here. That's the name of the database that we are having. And we have a package name here. So here we also need to define a schema output directory. The way SQLite migrations are working is slightly different. So the idea is that, like, we can write a migration, no problem. and it's just one more file, but we want to also do validations. And to do the validations, we need to first create schema out, like we have to output the current schema, which in turn will actually create a database. It's gonna name it 1.db, and then it's gonna use that file to run validations for that migration that we are gonna write. It's super cool, so bear with me now. So here I'm gonna say schema output directory here, set. And then here I would say it's gonna be a file. Wait, it's gonna be a file. And then the file will be located to the source main SQL Delight / databases. So this is directory relative to the module where this happens. So basically it's gonna be here in my source main SQL Delight, and then it will create a folder databases. Now, just by adding this, and if I sync now, what's gonna happen is, let's wait for this, it's gonna add some tasks to my terminal. So if I do here Gradle tasks, I can actually look here what happens. So here I have generate debug user. So generate debug is like, or generate release is the name of the command. Then users database being the name of the database, and then it says database schema, for example. So generate debug users database schema, or verify debug users database migration. So first I'm gonna do this. So copy this guy, and I'm going to run it. And now that I will run it, it will, as I said, generate here a folder databases 1.db. So that's the current schema for the current database. So far, so good. Now I can write a migration and then run validations on that. Cool? So it's super easy. Now here, look, an additional cool thing when you're having SQL Delight is if you have installed, like if you use SQL Delight, you need to install the SQL Delight plugin. It's gonna save your life. It's so helpful. It's like insane. Now what's gonna happen here is I am going to add a directory, and then it suggests me what sort of directory I can add. Yes, I want to add migrations. And now inside my migrations, I have to write what's going to be the migration name, or basically I have to create new file. So SQL Delight file, cool. And then I'm gonna say migration. So the tables or like just a file is like, I have full control. Table is gonna add .sq by itself, or actually for file probably as well. But for migration, it's adding SQM, which means SQL migration, I guess, the type. And then here I would say, let's say 1. The name probably doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter. And I'm pretty certain it doesn't matter. Anyway, so here I just write the SQL that I have written also for the room. And I can do alter table, and as you can see, it auto-completes everything. Users entity is the name of my entity. So I have it here, create table user entity, has user ID, email, and about. What I want to do here is I want to alter that table, and I'm gonna also add column, and I'll name this column also favorite. And it's also gonna be integer, not null. And I have to add semicolon at the end. That's it. That's my migration. But now that I have added this column, it's not gonna work. I mean, it's fine, but like I have to also change here. As you can see, it already tells me that there is a migration for this table, and this table needs to be altered. Oh, I have to add here what I'm promising to be done here in this file. Isn't that awesome? So favorite integer, not null. And now that I have added this one, the code that it automatically generates is basically, it needs additional stuff. And then it is not compiling. So to compile, I have to add here the favorite, and then add here one more question mark, so that it can, for the insert statement, .user, it can add full, and then here also add the favorite, and basically that's it. And I don't know why this is still red. Doesn't matter. But basically that's all that I had to do, really. And now, as you remember here, I had task that says verify debug users database migration. I'm gonna copy this and I'm going to run it. And let's see, what does it say? Okay, it failed. Okay. Okay, there is a type, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the problem. And now let's run again. And now it works. So cool, right? So even the compiler was telling me that something's wrong, and I have this validation, and it runs the validation over this file that was generated before I do the migration. And also here the compilation errors are gone. And basically, if you ask me, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but the migration for SQLite was simpler or easier, if you ask me. So I'm also going to create a branch in this repository, and I'm gonna name it DB migration test. And then I'm going to push it so that you can find it. As I said, these repositories are linked below this video so that you can access them. These exercises are in different branches, so you can also access. And yeah, hopefully that's going to be helpful. Okay, cool. If there are any questions, meanwhile, please let me know. Okay, I'm just checking the stream on YouTube. At some point, there were 6 people watching, but it was like going up and down, up and down. Probably the content wasn't that interesting for many, but doesn't matter. So we have currently 3 people watching. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Okay, if there are no other questions, let's close the stream. Anyway, we are close to the time, about 1 hour. Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you today on the call and on the stream. Once again, for people that want to participate in these topics that we are doing weekly, you can join the community and then you can contribute with topics that we can cover in next or in the following streams. And for people on the call, thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Jove. Yeah, bye.
Cheers. Okay, I just closed the stream. And yeah, I'm gonna also close the call.